This video is about Chrome Developer Tools, something that most of us who work with websites use every day, yet we might not know the full potential of it. In this video, I'm going to show you the most useful features of this developer tools and show you how you can use it to debug issues on your website and make things easier for yourself. I will show you each section and each features of the sections, and we'll show you some real examples. So I have opened a random website, which happens to be my personal website by accident. And now I'm going to open the developer tools. And the simplest way to do this is by right-clicking on the page and select inspect. Or you can just press F12 on your system, or open it by this three dots here and on more tools. It would be your developer tools here. Okay. So now you can see that I have different tabs here: elements, console, sources, network, performance, and there's also more tabs which have more advanced uses. But the first tab that we're going to deal with, and the one that might be the simplest one, is the elements tab. In this tab, we have the complete DOM of the page rendered, and we can also see the styles and interact with some of the JavaScript in the page. As you can see, all the server-side codes like PHP and Python and whatever it is rendered to this final HTML things here. And each of them has certain attributes like classes, hrefs, IDs, and they also have some styles that you can see on the right-hand side here. To select an element and see more of it, you can either hover over it in the left-hand side here, or you can select this locator here and just pick your element by hovering over it. For example, I want to choose this section here. And if I click on it, I will see the DOM here. I open this tag and I can see that it has a paragraph here and a div element with a button here inside it. Okay, now if I click on this anchor here, I can see the styles for this button. And one important thing to know is that the priority of the styles for this button here are in the same order as the styles that I see here. So this is the priority of the styles. And you can see that some of them, like this cursor, text line, have been crossed out. And that is because there is some other higher priority cursor rule here on top of it that overwrites this one. So whenever you see a style rule that is crossed out, it means that another higher level has overridden it. Another time you see some rules that are faded, and this means that these rules simply don't apply to this element. You might write them, but for this certain element they don't apply, and because this flex grow is for the elements that have a display of flex, but this anchor doesn't simply have it. Another time you might see a yellow triangle on the left side of your rule, and that means that that value is not valid. So for example, in this text transform, if I write a number, it would be invalid because this has to be a certain word like capitalized or lowercase. But if I write a number, it would simply tell me that it's invalid property value. These are the best ways to debug your CSS issues on your website, and it'll help you to find the exact point that your code is broken. Because when you have an overridden rule or some invalid properties, you will know it. Another part of this style is that there are styles that this button inherits from its parent element. For example, this button inherits the overflow wrap from this element, because in the DOM tree, it has a higher level. Sometimes there are some user agent style sheet, and this means that these styles has been applied by your browser, which in our case is Chrome. So for each div element, you have a display of block and a Unicode BD of isolate. I don't know what it is at. But these styles are applied by your browser, and you cannot change them. You can overwrite them, but you cannot change them. And these are the default styles that Chrome has. If you're using another browser, they might apply another styles. Like I know that Safari applies a lot of user agent style sheet. If you want to see that where this style has been written in your files and your theme or plugins, you can click on this link, which will show you the exact location or the source of the styles, which in our case is in the main PHP file. It's an inline CSS. So this is not really helpful. Most of the time, if you have the style in a separate CSS file, which in this case, it is an inline CSS in the main file. And it is also on the sources tab. We will get to that tab with more details later. There are one more useful things in this style tab here that I want to show you, and that is the state of the element, or sometimes you can call it in CSS pseudo classes. They are not really classes, but pseudo classes. So for example, this button, when I hover over it, you can see that the background color changes. But in the normal CSS tab, in the normal styles tab here, I cannot see the styles for this button when it's hovered. So what I need to do is to change the state of this button. Let me select it here in the DOM and change the state of it to hover. And now you can see that I have this background color here. So let's make some changes to this button and actually see it in action. This is a variable, and if you click on it, you will see a whole section of the variables that we use on this page. And you can change it just here. I will change it to red, which is a very noticeable color. And I changed the state of it to hover. And now I have the background color when it's hovered, as you can see in the role name here. Okay, I changed this background color to another noticeable color like green. And now, when I change this state to normal, I can see the changes that I have applied. And if I refresh the page, the good thing about this developer tools is that all the changes don't take effect on the real website, and they are all temporary. And you can't make any real change to the website. Now, there is the computed tab here. And if you click on it, you see this box here, which is really helpful. It shows you the actual width and height of this box. It'll show you the padding, it'll show you the border, and it will show you the margin. And on the real page, they would be in the same order, like the first padding and then border and then margin. This gives us a really good visualization of these properties. And one other cool thing about it is that you can just double click on it and change it here. And although it doesn't take permanent effect on the website, you can see the effect and just do trial and error. And if I want to change the border as well, I can change it to 10. And just the left margin, I can also change it to 100. And you will see it here. Now, one more difference between this computed tab and styles tab is that here we have the whole list of the CSS rules that are applying to this element. In this case, this anchor element here. And some of them are crossed out, some of them are not taking effect, some of them are invalid. And this is not a really clean list of the things that is happening to this element. So if I want to see a clean list of all the CSS properties for this element, I would go to the Computed tab to see the final output of all the CSS rules here. In the background color, I can see that the final background color that has been taken effect for this element is this color. And these are the border bottom width, radius, and color, and all the other ones. So these are basically all the rules that we have defined for this element. And on the button here, you can also see the fonts for this element. So this, the difference between this and the other one is that this is a way more clean list, and this is the final output of the CSS rules. In the Layout tab here, you will see two main sections. One is called Grid and the other one is called Flexbox. And what they actually do is to demonstrate the outlines and the structures of your page if they are using Grid or if they are using Flexbox. So in this case, our page is not using Grid and it's using Flexbox. And if I check either of these elements, it'll show it better on my page, and it will show the outlines, the border, and the whole structure of the page. If you don't know what Grid and Flexbox are, they are the two main methods right now in the CSS to design the layout of your page. Now, these are just for debug purposes and to just see the actual layout of your page. And in the Flexbox overlay section here, as I hover over these elements, I can see them on the page. And if I check them, I can see that how much space has this Flexbox is taken. I can see the actual borders of this, and I can see that here there is a gap. And if I select another element, like this one, I can also see that where is this element on the page. And also you can see that as I select these, there is this little badge here. And that is because here we have this badge settings, and you can enable it. And if this element has any of these badges, if it has a grid box layout, if it has a flex layout, or it's a media or something else, it'll show it on the DOM. This is a really cool feature too. So this section is for seeing the actual Flexbox or the grid layout of your elements in the page. Another tab here is the Event Listeners tab. And the list that you see here are the actual events that have a callback functions in your JavaScript. You can see some of these are self-explanatory, like the click one, key press load, and this one is for the page is completely loaded. This is for the Contact Form 7 plugin. And all of these events have something going on. For example, when I click on the document, there's a callback function that if I click on it, it'll show me that what it will do, which is in this case, nothing. This function does nothing. Okay, and here on the Elements tab again, if I scroll the page and scroll the window, I can see that it will clear the timeout and do some unnecessary thing. Okay, so if you have this different event listeners on your website, you would actually be able to see the callback functions and then work with it. Now let me refresh the page to show you the DOM breakpoints. Okay, now we have 3 other parts here, which is DOM breakpoints, properties, and accessibility. But we will get to these later as we go to the console and sources and also performance tab, which these are more useful when we get to those points. In the left-hand side on the elements, when I right click on a DOM node, I have different options. And the first one, of course, is Ask AI. We have AI here too, as we have everywhere these days. So apparently I have to turn it on. Let me just quickly enable AI for this. And hopefully it works now. So I think I can just ask some questions, or I can just make him do stuff for me. Okay, so I just asked this AI to give me the style of this element in grid, which I think the default one is in Flexbox. I'm not sure. I think I targeted the wrong element, but anyway, it will give me the element with the gridbox CSS, which is actually really cool, and I can use it on my website. So I think if you want to debug some CSS issues, or you want to change the style or do anything else, you can ask this AI and it will help you. And this add attribute, edit attribute, and edit as HTML and all the other things, you can just double click on any of these and edit it. The tag name, attributes, the attributes value, you can edit it. You can duplicate the element or delete it. And one useful part is this copy part, which lets you copy the element outer HTML or the selector. If you want to add some style to this element in your CSS file, one thing you can do is to grab the selector from this part, which is WP block group class, or simply copy the selector here, which will be this. Okay, and you can copy the selector, which will be this. As you can see, I can paste it here and it's main tag with some ID. And the JS path would help you in your JavaScript code. So in the console tab, if I write it, let me just... Okay. It doesn't allow me to paste any code, and it tells me that I'm not understanding what I'm doing. So I need to turn this off. So there is a chance that you also might have this enabled too. So let's turn this off. So be careful of what you're typing in your console, because this might actually interact with your website. And not that it can change anything on the server, but it can reveal some information from your website that you don't want to. So if I type allow pasting and just hit enter. Okay, that worked because I had an extra space here. And now if I paste this code, I have the JavaScript path to this element, and I can target this element in my JavaScript files with this code. And the other options in this copy are copy styles and copy XPath. So if I copy all of the styles for this element and then paste it here, it would be an unnecessary thing, but just to show you that it can be done. So I've just pasted a bunch of style here that are just duplicated, and they're already applied to this element. And as you can see, all of them here are overridden and crossed out because I have a higher priority here. Another interesting part of this is that I can set breakpoints here, and that is for this part, which is DOM breakpoints. You can actually define some breakpoints. You can actually define 3 types of breakpoints. The first one is subtree modifications, which is a point where one of the sub-elements of this element are changed or modified. The second one is for attribute modifications, which means that class or other attributes of an element like ID, SRC, or something else are modified. And the last one is that node removal, and it'll happen when the element is removed. We will use this DOM breakpoints in the sources tab here to debug the issues, on the possible issues on our website. And also you can force the states from this section here too. And if I expand this recursively, it will expand all of the elements inside this element. And another cool feature is that when I have selected this DOM, which is the first introductory part of my website, I can take a screenshot of it without any add-on or something. So if I click on Capture Node Screenshot, it'll take a screenshot of this particular node on my website. Another great part about the developer tools is the device toolbar. So this is not actually in the Elements tab, and you can see it always on your developer tools, but it allows you to simulate your website or to show your website as a mobile device will show it. Let me change the structure of this developer tools to be at the right side of my browser, and now I see this developer tools here. If I change the width of the developer tools, you will see that my website is responsive enough to change its layout based on my behavior. Now I click on this device toolbar here, and it will show me a list of the mobile devices or some devices that I can show my website on. In this list, you have different mobiles like iPhone, Samsung, or some laptops even. If I click on each one of them, I can see a simulation of my website on that device. This is not a 100% real simulation. It means that my website is not actually running on an iPhone XR, but it's pretty similar. For example, on the Surface Pro 7, and I also have some other options. I can change the width, I can see the width and height here. And another option is that adding network throttling. So this will simulate like a slow connection on your website. If I change this, right now it's with no throttle, and if I refresh the page, it'll load instantly. And if I add a mid-tier mobile network, you can see that it takes a little bit longer. And if I put it on low end mobile, it'll take even longer. And the offline network will also show nothing. The other one is changing the orientation of your website in that device. In this case, it's a Surface Pro 7. So if I change the orientation, you will see that my website's orientation is also changing. Let's test this on another device like Pixel Mobile 7. And right now it's vertical, and if I change the orientation, it'll be horizontal. And the structure changes based on that. The next tab that we're going to talk about is the console tab. And this is also a really useful tab. We mainly use it for two purposes. The first one is seeing the logged messages, which are warnings or errors or simply information messages. And the second purpose is to run JavaScript and interact with our website. These logged messages, they might be written by us, or they might be produced by some errors or warning on our website. So this sidebar here will show us the different kinds of messages that we can see here. We have a total of 16, which 14 of them are this warning that are telling us about the cookies in Chrome. We have one error that tells us that our website has failed to load this picture. These are the warnings, and we also have this one information here. To log messages from my code and to show them on this console, we will use this console object that is available in JavaScript. So if I type in console here and hit enter, I will see the different functions that this object has. whichever of these properties that has an f in front of it is a function. So assert, clear, context, they are all functions. And the ones that we mostly use are log, debug, or maybe error. So I'm using one of these functions here to clear this console. Okay. To show this better, I have created a sample HTML file linked to this JavaScript file, and I will open this in my browser to see the logs and errors I have in this JavaScript file in my console. This is my sample page that I have just created. I will open the developer tools and the console tab, and I have this log message that I created in JavaScript file. We use the log function when we want to just print simple information. We also can use console warning. And we can also use the console error. However, these are the things that we don't deliberately write, but they just get produced by the codes that we have written, and the browser itself produces these to show us that we might have some errors or warnings in our code. I refresh this page to see the actual changes. Let's see if we have saved this file. Okay. Now I need to filter all the things that I have and make sure that all of them are showing. I have this warning and this error. And if I click on this link here, it will show me that where exactly is this happening. And it will tell me that this is a warning and this is an error and this is just a simple log. What can be more useful to us is to use the console.debug function and log some information from our variables or methods in our console to actually debug our code. Let me show this to you with an example function. Now I have created this function that when we give it a name, it'll return the number of characters for that name. We have added a debug here that tells us that which name we have received. We have a debug here that will tell us the type of the variable that we have got if it's not a string, which is good for debugging. And we have also a debug here that tells us the length of that word. So let's use this function and see it in action. I'm going to get the number of characters for John, save it, and see the output on the website. Let me refresh the page and I will receive this message that debugs the information here. Now let's give it a non-string thing like 12. And then again see the page, and it will log the debug information that this is not a string and it's a number. The best thing to do would be to use this log and debug functions whenever it's needed to actually debug our codes easier. We now get to the second use of this console tab, which is interacting with the JavaScript. And it means that I can run the function that I have in my JavaScript file right from here. So I can write get name length and then type in the name and hit enter, and it will run that function and give me the result. And if I say something wrong here, it will output this error. There are some other types of messages that you can use in your code and print information, and I'm going to add a link in the description, and you can read more about those kind of things that you can do with your console. Let's open another website and interact with that page a little. Here I have opened the Microsoft News website and opened the developer consoles for it. If I open the console, I would see that I have 1 error, 262 warnings, and 13 user messages and 11 info. These are different informations. Most of them are useful when you're debugging information. What we want to do here is to interact with the page with the code that we write in the console. So let's write something. I want to, whenever I click on this title, an alert appears. So I have now selected this in the Elements tab, and I can select it either by ID or by its selector, or I can just copy the JavaScript path. It would be easier if it has an ID or a specific selector. Sometimes it's not that easy to select something just by ID or class. And now in the console, let's clear the console first. And we have selected our element, and we're going to add an event listener for click. And I want to, whenever I click on this element, an alert appears on the page. And our code ran successfully. And if I click on this, there will be an alert on Microsoft News page that would tell me clicked. This was a very simple demonstration of showing that you can interact with the page in your console. You can run more complicated codes and whatever JavaScript code that you can write in your file, you can also write in your console and interact with your page. Another useful option that you have in your console is to show the log for AJAX requests. And if you want, you can also preserve the log, that when you refresh the page, the log will still be there until you clear it yourself. We don't want this for now, but we want to log the AJAX requests. So I check this, close the settings, and reload the page. And now I will see way more information. And the information added is about the AJAX requests on the page. I can see information about this request, but we also have access to these requests in the Network tab as well. This is your Network tab that shows all the requests that your website is making, and it shows more information from those requests. Let me refresh this page to show you the information that the page is showing. When I refresh this page and I'm on Network tab, I set this filter that filters the requests based on their type to all, and it will show all kinds of requests to me. I will see some requests here. I will stop the tracking so it doesn't show me any other thing. And as you can see, I have different kinds of requests here. The first one is XHR requests. The second one is request to the document pages, or basically PHP or HTML pages. CSS files, JS files, font files, images, media like MP3 or MP4, and other kinds of requests that I don't know much about. The ones that we see here, if I click on each one of them, I will see more information about them. But the status tab here shows you the status of the response, which in our case is like 200. We have 404 for the request that cannot be found. We have 403 for the requests that are forbidden. We have 500 for the server internal errors, and other kinds of codes that tell us what is happening. The type, we can also see it here, and the initiator, that we can see that where this request has been initiated. In this case, my picture here, if I click on this link, it'll tell me that it has been initiated by this main file. Back to the Network tab, and We also have this size column here that will tell us how much how much size does this request has. In this case, it is 71 bytes, but I can see that some of them are memory cache and some of them might be disk cache as well. And the difference between this memory cache and disk cache is that when something is saved on the memory cache, it is in your memory and it will be erased after you close the browser. And when something is in your disk cache, it is some kind of permanent and it's on your disk until you deliberately delete it. Let's refresh this page again. And if I close the browser or deliberately clear all the cache, then I will see more information about the size of these files. So I clear the cache and now they are not loading from my cache anymore. On my console, I have also this error that tells me this file cannot be found. I can also see more information about this request in the network tab as well. If I click on it, I can see different parts that tells me more information about it. Regarding cache, you can also disable cache from this part as well. So if I refresh this page, all this would be loaded from my memory cache. But if I disable cache, then I don't need to clear my cache anymore. So if I'm debugging an issue and I want to just get rid of cache and don't have any cache, this is a really good option that will help me. For now, we want cache to load the website faster. And let's get back to the requests and their information. To show some more requests from a website, I have opened the NASA website here. I'm closing this JavaScript license since we don't need it anymore. And on the network tab, you can see that I have loaded some files from disk cache. And I can now filter these requests by their type. I'm going to take a look at some of the AJAX requests that this website is sending. So I'm going to refresh it and then take another look. The XHR requests that we have here, if we click on it, we can see more information about those requests. The first tab is the headers one, which tells you the request URL, which simply is the URL that you're sending the request to. The request method, which can be get, post, update, delete, head. We have different kinds of methods, but the ones that we mostly use are get and post. And the main difference between those two types of requests is that when you're sending a GET request, you're also sending all the parameters in the URL, as you can see here. We are sending API key in the URL. We are sending the URL and all the other parameters of the request. But in a post request, the user cannot simply see all the parameters in the URL, and we are sending it in the body of the request. We also have a response header and a request header. So when your browser sends a request to the server, it's your request headers, and you can see it here, and it sends that request with these headers. And when your server sends a response back to your browser, it sends it with these headers, as you can see here. These are really useful when you really want to debug a request in your website. In this case, that our request method is get. If I click on this payload section, I will see the different parameters that are in this request, which are API key and the values nasa.gov and UUID and the URL. The preview will show me a preview of the response for this request. Well, the response is the rendered response. In case there is some HTML or CSS in the response, I will not see it in the preview. So the preview is the raw code for that response. The initiator section will tell me that from which part of my website, this request has been initiated. In this case, since the NASA website is using apparently WordPress, it is sending these requests from WP Parsley plugin and this file here, which is pretty cool. So we can actually have more information about NASA's website. And the timing will tell us also that how long it is taking for this request to do each part for this request, like DNS lookup or initial connection. When you have all of this information about a request, like the URL and the payload and the body of that request, you can simply go to a tool like Postman and simulate that request, or in your code, write a function that sends a request to that URL and either get the information or debug your code to see what is wrong. When I have caching disabled and reload the page, I can do some debugging on the page speed issues. I am now sorting the requests based on their time to see what is taking the most to load. I have one JavaScript request that is still pending. I need to wait for it. But other than that, I can see that I have this picture here that took 1.5 seconds and this file that 1.4 seconds. And this file actually has an error and it's not loaded. Then it took 30 seconds to give me this error. If I click on it, I will probably see some more information than why it's failing, but apparently not. So I'm not seeing anything specific here. And the columns that I see here, probably I don't need the initiator, so I'm going to just delete it, and I'm going to add some columns. So waterfall is a pretty useful one. When I load the page, I want to show you how this waterfall works. It basically shows a timeline of the different scripts and different requests on the website based on their time. So I can see that this request has took this much of the timeline of the website to load, and the other requests too. I can see the same behavior here as well. I can filter, for example, based from 0 to the second 2 of loading the website. I can filter only the requests that have been on the first second of the website. Okay, that was a mistake. So here I can just select the scripts that are in this part of the loading speed and has been initiated in that section. I still see this failed request, and because I have disabled the cache, it always takes 30 seconds to load. If you remember the throttling option from the previous section, we also have it here too. I can change the speed to a fast or slow 4G or a 3G or an offline network. I can change it to 3G, enable cache. And also I have some other settings here on the network conditions. The cache is enabled, the network throttling is set to 3G. I can also change my browser agent. I can change it to maybe Safari, which will set my agent to this value. And I can also change the content encodings too, but I don't think that will be useful for our testing purposes. I now close this and refresh this page. And the main file of our website, which is this one, should now have the user agent of Safari. So we don't need the response header, we need the request header. And if we check the user agent for this, it's going to be the Safari user agent that we saw earlier. The main file of your page always sends some cookies if you set your cookies, and you can see it in this cookies tab here. The value, the expiration date, and other information, but we have better access to the page cookies in the application tab, which we will discuss alongside the sources and some other tabs in the next videos. Thank you for being with me until the end of the video. Please comment if you have any questions and like the video. See you in the next video.